Dear colleagues, I'm very pleased to participate at this international conference, whereby I'm going to present a research paper that has been undertaken from my side. As Avni ALİDEMAJ, I'm Doctor of Science, PhD in Governance and Public Administration, and I have a Master's of Law. On the same time, I'm a lecturer at Kosovo Institute for Public Administration and researcher by Kosovo Institute for Functional Democracy. And this research paper has been drafted and written together with Associate Professor Dr. Sadik, who is a professor at the Law Faculty of Kadri Zeka University in Gjilan, Kosovo. What we wanted to research actually was to sort of measure the impact of civil society organizations in Kosovo in drafting public policies. So we named the entire paper or the research Civil Society Organizations in Kosovo and their inclusion in decision-making process at the municipal level. Furthermore, we were just simply trying to see what is the role of the civil society in general in democratic systems, and to see what is the interaction between the civil society and civil society organizations with political institutions or with the government. What is the level of interaction in drafting and different public policies, in inclusion of the civil society in decision-making processes, and as well in the stages of implementation of those public policies. So the paper deals with the role and the contribution of civil society organizations in decision-making process at municipal level, especially at municipal level in Kosovo. It further analyzes the activity of civil society as a form of organization in democratic systems, relations with the state power, and of course the necessity of mutual interaction. This paper, while drafting this paper, we have applied different methods of research. So we tried through historical, analytical, comparative, and qualitative methods to obtain all the needed information in order to measure the impact of a civil society in drafting the public policies in Kosovo. We all know that civil society has a pretty much long history, which has gone through several important stages. It has faced many difficulties while transitioning from one stage to another, and both in terms of organizational difficulties, but as well as cultural terms. Civil society is increasingly becoming an important actor in democratic systems of governments around the world, with a special emphasis in the EU countries. Moreover, the democratic maturity of a society in Europe has begun to be measured by the space that civil society has in decision-making process, in the formulation of public policy agendas, and in the oversight processes of their implementation. The concept of civil society is based on the rights of the citizens to freely form non-governmental organizations and associations, and to systematically put pressure on political decision-making centers to articulate their demands. The civil society in the first place protects the individuals, his freedoms and rights to articulate the interests of groups of citizens outside the political structures, and to engage as well in the fulfillment of those interests through institutional ways. Civil society provides various services, represent and protect the interests of society or social groups, plays a supervisory role over the government, promotes democratic values and transparency in governance, influences decision-making, and protects the rights of the citizens. Now, when we look into a Kosovo context, while facing its development challenges, civil society in Kosovo is trying to find its authentic voice in the newly established state that must overcome numerous economic, social, and political obstacles. Facing those challenges, civil society is aiming to help Kosovo at the same time, while focusing on the Euro-Atlantic integration processes as well, which are proven to be quite challenging and sometimes even give the impression of being a mission impossible. However, civil society in Kosovo is still poorly consolidated sector. Therefore, not infrequently, the activities of civil society organizations are not in line with the needs of the citizens due to the creation of dependence on donors by implementing projects that are not exclusively based on the assessment of citizens' need, but more on a donor's agenda. Civil society in Kosovo has not yet been able to position itself as a government partner at the municipal level capable of shaping policies and help solve citizens' problems that cannot be effectively addressed by the state institutions. Furthermore, if we see the civil society in Kosovo, actually it is more or less in fully in compliance with the overall development of the society here. The civil society organizations' participation in decision-making processes is a characteristic of the societies with functional democracies. Moreover, civic participation in decision-making improves the accountability of the authorities by increasing the responsibility in relation to the social contract itself. Now, despite being a fairly young democracy, Kosovo has a pretty much progressive legal framework. It has been developed with the strong support of the international community, whereby a majority of international instruments protecting human rights and are incorporated within constitutional provisions, and as well numerous positive laws. Consequently, even the rights to participate is entrenched in constitutional provisions, laws, and bylaws of Kosovo. Overall, despite this good legal basis for guaranteeing the rights of the citizens and civil society to participate in decision-making process at the municipal level, this important process is being neglected in the context of Kosovo. Improving decision-making through civic participation has remained within the framework of empty statements by political representatives, discouraging citizens from getting involved into a process. Civil society organizations are making efforts to change the situation, despite the tendency of local authorities and political institutions to instrumentalize, I would say, the civil society organization in an attempt to deprive them of this power guaranteed by constitution and legal provisions. Quite often, the civil society in Kosovo are treated as they were kind of a parallel power and not as a group of citizens organized to address various problems. Now, if we go further and analyze the civil society and the state institutions in generally, there is a sort of rivalry and complementarity between the civil society and the state, and it has been present all the time, in which cases relations have not always been peaceful and calm, especially in the part of the state which in its history has not always been respectful of civil society. This problem of the state's approach to civil society is not only historical but also current, because the state, despite the changes it has undergone in nature, structure and form, continues to remain an institution with a pretty much strong cohesive nature. It's indeed quite clear that the state is one of the forms of political organizations of society, but it's not the only ruling form. In addition, society has produced other alternative forms of the association of people in social groups, free and independent of the state, with whom the state cannot compete, but rather, I would say, embrace complementarity approach. Therefore, the concept of the absolute state in society that claims the right of monopoly over all power within the community is no longer acceptable as a concept. And of course, the state is more willing to have a direct connection with the individuals without the presence and mediating role of civil society as a means of regulating and establishing the right balance between the state authority and the individual. This mindset is still one of the most serious obstacles in strengthening the civil society and citizens group. In many cases, the state do not agree with mediating role of civil society under the well-known pretext of existence of a parallel state or state within a state. However, the role of this intermediate link between the state and the individual remains one of the priority function of a civil society, even in modern times. Civil society and public policies. Now we have simply tried to sort of measure more directly and more closely at the municipal level this interaction between the public authorities and the civil society organizations. And if we basically go further and analyze a little bit one of the definitions, I would say, of the public policy, which is given by Jenkins, who states that a public policy is a set of interrelated decisions made by political actors or groups of actors regarding the goals and means of achieving them in a specific situation, when in principle actors must have the power to reach those decisions. Now, this particular definition sees public policy as a process that has several different stages and that involves many decisions. Another important aspect of the definition is the reference it makes to the political actors who are not always in government. Basically, by public policy, we mean a set of action carried out by a group of actors to provide a solution to certain problems within a given society. Public policy, all of us know that they can derive from above, using top-to-bottom approach, but as well they can derive also from below, from bottom to up, using bottom-to-up approach to pressure of public opinion, media, interest groups, various institutions, think tanks, and so on. Now, political leaders are rarely real sources of political innovation, but there are more, I would say, academia that plays a vital role in political initiatives by developing core theories which are later transformed into political proposals by leaders and parties. Starting public policy from a bottom-up is more significant in all political systems. As a general rule, the more democratic and pluralistic the political system is, the more significant the up and down pressure for policy launches. Public opinion plays a major role in this process, as they force political leaders through the electoral process to take these concerns into account by setting an agenda that addresses them. Often these concerns remained not fulfilled until articulated by groups representing different sections of the public, like interest and the pressure groups, media, NGOs, and so on. Now, in Kosovo, the media have been very influential in this stage of setting the agenda in the policy process. This is because politicians care a lot about their public image, and the media in Kosovo have a strong influence on the citizens. As a result, major headlines about an issue in the newspaper and electronic media are usually signs that the politicians will address this particular topic. Due to this specific situation in which Kosovo has been since 1999, international actors have also played a major role in setting agendas, usually being the main decision makers for certain legislation. The academia has generally not been very active, unlike in more developed countries. During the policy formulation stage, civil society organizations, together with other sections of society, can propose different policy solutions. This is also a stage where society can play a key role in improving the information provided by politicians and in testing the viability of the demands of the government and the oppositions. Many policy issues have been widely discussed by Kosovo civil society, and for each of them, different organizations have offered solutions. While drafting the labor law in Kosovo, the law on persons with the law related to the persons with disabilities, the law on health insurances in Kosovo, civil society organizations have been part of working groups where the government of Kosovo has used the expertise of civil society in formulating the necessary policies for our society. The implementation phase of public policies is one of the most important phases because no policy has value if it is not implemented. Kosovo has plenty of examples of legislation and policies based on best practices that have never been implemented. Civil society organizations play a key role in providing services on behalf of the government. It's not uncommon for civil society organizations to have a greater capacity to implement certain public policies than state institutions, and therefore in many countries government institutions work together with civil society organizations to implement certain policies. Exactly the government strategy for cooperation with civil society addresses this issue and recognizes the rights of the civil society to be an active part on implementation of a certain or given public policies. Now, civil society and inclusion in decision-making process. From a theory that describes 6 different steps of the political decision-making processes, like setting the agenda, drafting policies, decision-making, policy implementation, monitoring, and policy formulation. On each and every step actually provides the opportunities for the interaction between NGOs and public authorities and the civil society in general. In addition, there are 4 different levels of participations, like inclusion, information, consultation, dialogue, and partnership. These can be applied during any step of the decision-making process. However, often any of these forms is more relevant to the specific part of the processes. Now, if we analyze the part of the information, we can see that information is the basis of every next step in involving the civil society in the political decision-making process. It is relatively low level of participation related to the provision of information by public authorities and interaction or involvement of civil society. However, compared to the past decades, Kosovo has made a progress in the obligation of municipal authorities to notify and inform citizens and civil society of decision taken. This is done based on the law on access to public documents. Furthermore, municipal institutions are obliged to take a proactive approach to the publication of the information through various platforms by facilitating citizens' access to public documents and other information related to the decision making at the local level. This has been ensured based on the law on access to public documents, and in addition to that, administrative instruction on transparency in municipalities in Kosovo develops further legal obligation by strengthening this necessity of or obligation of the municipal authorities to inform the citizens in advance, having this proactive approach with regards to the information. Now, if we see the consultation, consultation is more or less as an initiative where public authorities ask NGOs and civil society for their opinion on a specific policy or development area or a specific official document. Consultation usually involves the authorities informing civil society on certain policies or law development and asking them for comments, inputs, and suggestions. This initiative and themes comes actually from a public authority themselves, or not from a civil society. In the consultation phase, municipal authority usually try to comply with the legal obligation to consult with citizens and civil society, but no proactive approach is observed that would ensure the participation of civil society in this important process. So this is very, I would say, characteristic feature of interaction at municipal level in Kosovo. And the absence of civil society in consultation is seen more or less as a favorable in decision-making and not as a phenomenon that affects the decline of the functionality of a local democracy. Moreover, municipal authorities justify the lack of civil society participation in public consultation as their credibility in relation to the local authorities. However, the truth lies elsewhere. The small presence of civil society in public consultation is related to the fact that their comments, suggestions are not being taken into account. On the other hand, the legal basis clearly states that no decision or document related to the general interest may be adopted without subject to a public consultation with the citizens and civil society in general. This has been ensured by Article 5 and 6 of the Administrative Instruction on minimum standards of public consultation in municipalities. And then furthermore, dialogue as an initiative can be taken by any party and can be broad or specific. A broad dialogue is a two-way communication and can take the form of public hearings to the specialized meetings between NGOs and public authorities. The discussion remains broad and is not related to any specific policy development process. Specific dialogue is built on a common interest for the development of a certain policy. This form usually results in some common comments or recommendation, strategy, or legislations. Local authorities are aware that for a given sector, civil society has more capacity and experience. Therefore, unlike the dialogue on general issues, on specific issues, it tries to dialogue with civil society organizations that are closely profiled in addressing certain problems. It could be environmental protection, cultural, human rights, and so on. Usually, dialogue on these issues aims to continue only with certain civil society organization, bypassing others. This is where the problem and the possibility of instrumentalizing civil society arises, creating inequality and undermining the independence of civil society organizations by themselves. Municipal institutions unable to draft the municipal development plans, for example, have involved experts and civil society organizations to assist in drafting this document, which has been drafted and approved in 7 municipalities in Mitrovica region, so northern Kosovo. Furthermore, the municipalities of northern Kosovo, Mitrovica region, have been very cooperative with civil society organizations in drafting plan for citizen participation in decision-making processes at local level, taking full advantage of the expertise of local NGOs. Namely, the expertise of only few NGOs have been used during this process of drafting this particular document. More specifically, one of the municipalities in Vuštri has engaged a certain organization to draft the municipal plan for the protection, promotion of cultural heritage and municipal development plan on integrity, integrity plan within the municipality. Surprisingly, these organizations are constantly involved in various projects and collaboration with municipal authorities, creating a certain dependence, I would say, on funds at the municipal level and those at the central level. So the municipal authorities prefer to dialogue and cooperate with certain civil society organizations which have capacities in certain areas, but this is affecting the creation of negative perception regarding the independence of certain civil society organizations. Furthermore, if we see another step of the partnership, partnership usually provides for shared responsibilities during each step of political decision-making process, starting from setting agenda, drafting, deciding, and implementing the particular political initiative or laws or bylaw. This is the highest form of participation and may include activities such as delegating specific issues to the NGOs, in the provision of services to the participating forum, and the establishment of joint decision-making bodies, including allocation of all resources. In all municipalities in Kosovo, in very rare cases, interaction have been recorded between municipal institution and civil society on a partnership level. There are cases when a partnership has been established in the phases of setting the agenda and drafting public policies, but very rarely has any partnership been noted which has been maintained throughout the decision-making process. Municipal authorities really consider the phase of implementation, evaluation, and reformulation of policies is in their capacity and should be carried out independently by the municipal institutions themselves, despite the legal provision that are saying the opposite. But nevertheless, we have some good practices of a partnership between civil society organization and municipal institution, which are noted, for example, in municipality of Pristina, where municipal institutions work closely with civil society organizations that are profiled in the field of improving the quality of education. Furthermore, these organizations are involved in the early stages of drafting public policies at municipal level and contribute throughout the decision-making process, including the implementation, evaluation, and reformulation of public policies in the field of education. However, this good practice is not being implemented in other municipalities, despite legal obligations. However, civil society in Kosovo remains to be better organized and structured in order to exercise their right to be involved in decision-making, which are guaranteed by a number of laws and bylaws. As a conclusion, we can say that civil society cultivates definitely a democratic political culture by articulating the will of citizens and making them aware that they are important within the decision-making process within the state. NGOs are in civil society in Kosovo is still unconsolidated sector. NGOs are still maturing entities and lack the necessary prerequisites to be sustainable and effective in their work. There are serious shortcomings in several areas, like lack of functioning, lack of organizational structures, lack of financial support, lack of internal governance structures, means to ensure sustainability and long-term existence and independence, and to avoid high dependence on donors. These are the key challenges of the civil society organizations in Kosovo. Civil society in Kosovo, with its capacities, has managed, despite all the difficulties, time to time to assist the government in shaping policies and to help addressing various problems. Public policy making is a very important process for any country because the decision made during this process affects the life of citizens. Now the civil society serves as the voice of citizens throughout the process of decision making. It can channel that voice, help formulate opinions, and provide solutions. The nature of civil society in Kosovo in the pre-war period was the delivering more the emergency aid and survival. Now, influencing public policies has not been a priority for the small number of civil society organizations that were active in that period. Now, communicating with government was not an option as well. After the end of the 1998-1999 war, with the adoption of the Constitution of Kosovo, the role of civil society was clarified and the policy process was stabilized. With this, Kosovo organizations taken new responsibilities to speak for the citizens whose voice is not heard, to offer solutions, and not only to criticize and to educate the citizens of Kosovo about policy problems and possible solutions. Despite the difficulties, civil society in Kosovo has managed to set a certain agenda, to formulate policy, to make some decisions, to implement policies, monitor and reformulate policies. In this regard, it's worth mentioning the increase of transparency of municipal institutions, drafting plans for citizens' participation in decision-making processes, drafting local policies on preservation and promotion of cultural heritage, local plans for gender equality, which are drafted as a consequence of a direct influence by civil society in Kosovo. Nevertheless, in Kosovo circumstances, there is a civil society interaction with local authorities need to be improved more. And but first of all, the most important issue that has been established so far is that the approach that the government's approach towards civil society has been changed. Now we see more or less, bit more, I would say, attempts to create and to establish partnership with the civil society organizations in order to address the needs of the citizens. Thank you very much for your attention.